Oh, students keep coming in. All right, so I'll just keep letting students join in, but I do want to officially get this kicked off because it's 1:02 and we want to be punctual. So thank you everyone for being here and being on time. This is so exciting. If you can't tell, I'm very excited that we have Dido, who is the Director of Education, Innovation, and Partnerships. I think I got that right, but I'm going to turn the mic over to him in a minute. But this is the first of hopefully a series of MindUp events that we will be doing. As you guys know, this is one of 4, and then based on your feedback and how things go, we will hopefully have more. And in the fall, we will hopefully also have a mini MindUp course that you could even take. It's such a crazy time, and this couldn't be more relevant. I think we need it anyway, but especially given what we've been through in the past year, a little mindfulness will go a long way. So without further ado, I'm going to stop
Can I
speaking.
quickly?
Kirk, I'll give the mic to you quick before we go with the Dido.
I'd love to share with everyone, some of our teachers and students, how this came about. I don't know if all of you know my background, but I was, a pretty inspired tennis player when I was younger, and always had a bit of, anxiety before big matches. And I was always a tough test taker. Like, I would follow things in class, but I would kind of get that anxiety, and I'd learn some rituals from coaches helping me. And it was it was like almost 20 years ago, maybe between 15 and 20 years ago, that I had the opportunity to meet one of my all-time favorite actresses, Goldie Hawn. And it was actually at an event randomly in New York for about mindfulness with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who was from Dharamsala, from India. And Goldie and I got in this incredible discussion about nerves and how can you kind of breathe and overcome them. And Goldie said, it's amazing with kids. And she was talking about more younger children and how to sort of really have them start to take mental breaks and brain breaks. And this was 15 years ago. And I was telling her about this idea I had for the Institute for Civic Leadership and how to get kids together based on what they're passionate about and their sports and their performing arts. And, I said, I have a dream that, someday we can have a school where they're all together. And this was like early internet days. And Goldie is like, well, I'm going to start meeting with scientists because I know there's something in the brain that, can do this. And over the years, we kind of crossed paths, maybe once a year, every other year. But every time we'd see each other, we could say, how's it going? And they're, oh, I'm meeting with scientists. I'm learning more about the brain and how it impacts kids. And I said, well, I'm actually doing conferences and I have this idea for a school and we're starting to learn about online education. And so the fact that we are here now for me is something really, really special, because I know the work and the dedication that Goldie has put in the whole organization, and how much she just loves her staff and is kind of blown away. And it's the same way that I feel about all of our teachers and all of our students here. So this is kind of the first of many opportunities to actually meld the two together, because if any of you students are like I am or was, feeling that this is the first time, MindUp is really looking to grow from youth and younger kids into both athletics, high school, performing, just a whole way to really kind of reset your brain. So I'm just super excited. I can't wait to kind of meet and spend more time with Dido, but I'll pass it over to him. I'm just super thankful for this partnership, and thanks everyone for joining. So I will pass the mic as well.
Thank you. This is going to be a conversation, so I'm happy to see faces, and we're all going to spend some time listening, sometimes getting in small groups, and then talking, and then coming back together. I like to think about these sessions as what I call a mind jamming session. So a mind jamming session is not something where you go and just listen. This is one where you take something, then you throw it in the air, and then somebody else throws something in the air, and then those two things couple and then mind jam together and create more ideas. So that's the best way you can get as much as possible out of this. And you are going to guide what I do. That means that it's based on the mind jamming from you that I'm kind of direct where we go with the content that we have today. So my name is Dido. I'm excited to work with students. I was a high school teacher for 7 years, and mostly I work in high school. So even though MindUp was a program for younger kids, I've always been the one to say, let's spend some more time with teenagers. And as somebody who played soccer and who just loves to exercise and watching sports, I've always seen a direct connection between the mindfulness that we teach kids in school so they can have less anxiety about testing, for example, and exactly what happens in an athlete's brain before they hear the whistle, before they hear 3, 2, 1, go. And I've done some experimenting throughout the years, so I have a lot that I want to share based on what you guys want to hear about. So I want to make it clear that you can interrupt me at any point, whether it be through the chat or through just unmuting yourself and shouting a question. This is what I want. I don't want to be the one talking for the whole time. So let's get right into it. First question, do you guys all know each other? Yes, somehow. So when I put you guys into smaller groups, make sure you know each other. And hopefully this is going to bring more context to the questions and comments that you guys might have. So the way I get into mindfulness, into MindUp, which is, again, it's Goldie Hawn created this program almost like 17, 18 years ago for students. But the way I got into it is because as a teenager, I was always a contrarian. Like, I never liked anybody telling me anything without explaining why. So anytime any adult especially would tell me something, I was like, but why is that? Why? And I would ask why to my mom, to my dad, to my teachers, to the priest. Everybody, after confession, why do I have to confess to you? Who do you confess to? And of course, adults didn't really like that. And over the years, when I became a teacher, I realized that this asking why could be answered by learning about the brain. Because I was always curious. I had a moment with my dad. I do something bad, and my dad just looks at me, right? And then my mom yells at me for like 3 days. And I would always wonder what makes the difference between the same misbehavior, but mom yells for 3 days, dad just looks at me. Or I would look at people who look for their phones for 20 minutes. Look for it. Where's my phone? Where's my phone? Where's my phone? And yet the phone is in their hands. What makes the difference between somebody who can know, oh, my phone is in my hand, and somebody who's like panicking? And that's how I got into the brain. So I'm hoping that when we talk today, you can kind of make direct connections like me about what you learn about the brain, your own brain, and the brains of people around you, and kind of foster that conversation that way. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here so you can see that although today is focused on only one thing, we are going to, MindUp is about a lot more than just one thing. So let me make sure you guys can see that. Slideshow. Can you guys all see you guys all see? Okay, cool. So I want to talk about those 4 pillars first, because this is the first session and some of you hopefully will come back, and those who aren't here today hopefully will come and join us later. So we are going to focus today on the brain, which is the first pillar of MindUp, which is neuroscience. And the reason why we think that teenagers should learn how the brain works is there are many behaviors that you have or that you see around you that you don't understand, or the adults around you don't understand. And when a teacher, an adult, and a teenager understand the brain, so many things can be explained. You can understand why sometimes you do things that don't seem to make a lot of sense, or something that seems to be overreacting or underreacting. The more you understand why it's happening in your brain, the more you can have the power to change it. So that's what we're going to focus on, how the brain works today. That's just the first pillar, though. The second pillar is social and emotional learning. And the easiest way to think about this is we like to think about people as whole being. If you are a student or if you're an athlete, you aren't just an athlete or just a student. You are a brother, a sister, a musician, somebody who loves movies. You are so much more than just one thing. And when it comes to social and emotional learning, we want teenagers and adults to understand that the more you look at yourself as holistic, the more you can understand yourself. So if I'm a teacher, for example, the more I look at all my students as whole beings who have experiences outside of my classroom, before my class and after my class, the more I can understand them. And the same thing for you. The more you look at yourself as more than an athlete, just because you play one sport doesn't mean that you can't let who you are outside of the field infiltrate who you are on the field. In fact, you want to welcome that, accept who you are holistically, and you are going to be better at understanding yourself. That's the second pillar. The third pillar of MindUp is positive psychology. And we're going to have a whole session on this in a couple of weeks. But I want to say two things about it right now, especially today with all these negative things happening around us. It's important for us to learn what positive psychology is. This does not mean that somehow everything is always perfect, everybody's always happy, you should always smile and laugh. No. What this means is that we are aware that psychology a long time ago was focused only on the things that did not work. So a psychologist would say, hey, kid, what's wrong? And you will list all the things that are wrong. And they would say, let's try to fix those things that are wrong. And then somebody some time ago said, let's ask a different question. Let's ask what's right, what's working, and let's try to maximize the things that are working. And that got better results. So instead of focusing on what's not working and try to fix it, you focus on what's working and you maximize that. And what you notice over time is that the things that are working take over the things that aren't working. And then the things that are negative start to follow the positive. That's why this is a very important pillar, which we would explore a lot later. And then mindful awareness or mindfulness. This one has many, you could explain this in many ways, but the simplest way is like this. Mindful awareness is to learn how to do one thing at a time, be present in the moment, and be non-judgmental. And the reason why those things are important to go together are that if you learn how to do one thing at a time and be here in the moment, you realize that, especially in 2021, with cell phones and computers and TVs, we are almost never doing one thing at a time. We're almost never focused on what's happening here. Like if your friend is talking to you, you're almost never only listening to them. If you are listening to a song, you're almost never only listening to that song. If you are playing an instrument, if you're playing a game, you're almost never only in that game. But we know from brain science that the more you train yourself to do just that one thing at a time, the better you become at it. And think about this example. Think about a sprinter who is about to start sprinting, right? They get down on their knees and they wait for the person with a gun to say 3, 2, 1, go. And before they hear the gun, there's all these people chanting and screaming their names and saying, go, 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 we're rooting for you. And yet the sprinter is calm, quiet, focused. And during that moment, no matter how loud people are around, the sprinter can't hear them because sprinter is focused on being here in the moment, in the zone, in the now. And the reason why that matters so much is because you are waiting for the signal to go. Because if you miss the signal, well, I mean, you are going to lose. And if you go too early, it'll be a false start. So the only way to focus enough to be ready is to tune everything out, be here now in the present moment, and wait for the signal so you can go. And that's how they increase performance. So that's why learning how to be here and now is extremely powerful for really everybody. And the second element of being here and now is being non-judgmental. This means that it's important for us in general as human beings to learn how to be non-judgmental towards ourselves. That means that if you're trying to be here in the moment and it's difficult and you're struggling, that's okay. Because if you start judging yourself, oh, I'm not doing a good job. Why can't I focus? Why am I not listening to him or to her? Why am I so distracted? The second you start asking yourself those questions, the more you take yourself away from being in the moment. So be here and non-judgmental. So if you notice that your mind is wandering, just notice that and come back. And also be non-judgmental towards other people. Just because you are able to, during a lesson or during a game, be quiet when the coach is talking and take it all in and remember everything, doesn't mean that everybody can do it the same way. Some people need to be like doodling, for example, to pay attention. Some need to be standing or leaning. And that's their way of being present in the moment. So as long as you understand the concept of being here in the moment, not judging yourself and not judging others, you essentially have a cocktail, which I think is pretty much a superpower. Because if you look at high performing athletes right now, coaches, successful actors, business people, most of them now have a mindfulness practice that allows them to be more productive. So in 2 hours, they can do more than somebody else can do in 5 hours without being mindful. So that was just kind of a little spiel about the 4 pillars of MindUp. And I want to stop here for now. And this is going to be the first time I put you guys into breakout rooms for like 3-4 minutes. And all I'm going to want you to do is talk about what you just heard me say. I talked about mindfulness, social and emotional learning, positive psychology, and neuroscience. There's no direct question. I just want you to talk to somebody about whatever came to your mind while you were listening to me. Was there a thought, a question, an idea, something that was confusing? Whatever that was, talk to somebody in your group for 3 to 4 minutes about it, and then we're going to come back together. So I'm going to put you guys in breakout rooms, and once you get the invite, accept it, and then I will assign automatically. Yes, create. Okay, here we go. Accept the
You're more
invite.
advanced than I am. That's pretty cool.
Let's go. Accept the invite. Timer. Welcome back. I think we have 25 more seconds until everybody's back. Ten more seconds.
Both of you.
Yeah, should all be back.
We just got zapped back. We were ready.
Technology, man.
Exactly. Time warp. Amazing.
So I want to continue the conversation. So really, there's no protocol. Anybody from any group at any point, just talk to us. What's something that you heard or said or thought in your small group that you would like to throw here so we can all kind of mind jam together? And you can just unmute yourself and oh, it's dirty, it's messy. I like it like that.
I guess I can start. I mean, in my group, we were talking about how a lot of us focus on like multitask. And I didn't get a chance to say this, but one thing that I found weird is that that's something I was kind of taught to do in school. And I was like, you're not really supposed to focus on one thing, but we were also comparing how different it is in like the States compared to other countries or in other continents, how people view multitasking or focusing on one specific thing.
I love that. Somebody either add to what Sophie said or respond or say what you talked about. Again, there's no protocol. I want to hear your thoughts.
I guess I'll go. So we talked a lot about, so we had, I think, 2 teachers, and we talked about like how it's going to be really helpful for us because some of us, like if we play a sport and say I play tennis, if you hit a bad shot, like you'll get so onto yourself and so upset. So doing this will help us kind of cool down and know like if you miss one shot, it's not like the end of the world. So it's going to be okay.
I love that. Keep adding, keep adding. I'm keeping my thoughts. I'm going to share later. Keep adding.
In our small group, we talked about mindfulness practice and things like we can do are like journaling, gratitude practice, or meditation.
Super powerful. To already hear you guys talk about these things before we even get into it. I mean, this is exciting. So yeah, anything else?
Well,
Sorry.
Go ahead, Charlotte.
Well, in our group, we brought into our attention how it was such a diverse group, and how Sophie said about like the attention and like how people in different countries like view things differently. It's so like fascinating how we were in different groups, but we actually talked about sort of the same thing about diversity and like different points of view and points of like idea. And so it was really interesting hearing Sophie's idea and about mindfulness and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I was actually, like what Sophie said. And I think as the other fellow Spanish teacher here, Candela from Argentina, I've spent a lot of time in Argentina. And something that's been hard for me is getting used to, I think in the US, there's a stigmatization about, doing nothing is a bad thing. And we don't know how to do nothing. We don't know how to do anything. We feel like we're not being productive. And I remember like Kande telling me different stories about an exchange student who they were peeling oranges or something. And she's like, okay, like now what? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's the plan? And they're like, we're just chilling. Like, this is it. We're in the moment. So I think especially being from the US and hearing you guys talk about experiences in other countries, it might be harder for us here. So just as important.
But I love that because what you guys did there is you looked at yourselves holistically and were able to compare. So I'm from Cameroon originally, West Africa. In fact, I just came back 2 nights ago. And I noticed that when I was there, I mean, my entire being changed. I mean, there was something about being with people, having conversations. And I don't have to explain it. It's almost as if rush didn't exist. All the time in the world was there, yet it was the same 24 hours. And I was comparing and contrasting with friends that I have here, when I ask something like, when can we see each other? I have noticed that it's almost people are excited about being busy. In fact, it's almost as if like, and I've had friends like trying to one up each other on how little they sleep. It's like, what does that mean? So, oh, you don't understand. I only slept 4 hours last night. Oh, you slept 4 hours. I slept 2. It's almost like you're dropping the mic on somebody for sleeping 2 hours. It's like, is that a thing to brag about? I don't really understand that, because if you understand what it's doing to your brain to not rest, to be busy all the time, to not be present in the moment, it's actually damaging your brain. And yet we've been convinced somehow, that's why I love this conversation, we've been convinced that the only way to be productive and to be successful and to make it is to be busy that way. In fact, I would say is to look busy, because just because somebody looks like they are busy doing all these things doesn't mean that they are being productive. So people who believe they're good at multitasking, often what they're doing is what you should call serial solo tasking. It's not really multitasking. It's, let me do a little bit here, then a little bit here, then a little bit here. And the reason why that this is so powerful, think about it. Think about when the last time you were maybe driving your car and you had music in the background, you're bumping your head, and then before you make the last turn or before you park, without thinking, you turn down the volume so you can see better, right? If this sounds familiar, put your hand up like this so I can know. Have you ever seen anybody who does that? Or the people are talking about, no, stop talking, I gotta park. What's that got to do with anything? That's your brain reminding you that, in fact, you aren't that good at multitasking. Your brain wasn't designed to do that. You are better off stopping those other senses so you can focus on one thing. And I want you guys to challenge all these assumptions, to challenge all these perceptions that the only way to make it is to seem or appear busy. And this is so crazy, because when I was counseling students in high school here, I had students who came to me and said that they were stressed because they weren't stressed enough. Hear me out here, right? A kid will come and say, hey, look, all my friends are stressed. Like, they don't sleep. They can't finish their homework. I finish my homework. I sleep well. That's stressing me out. It's like, yo, what are you talking about? So how did we convince the person who realized that you don't have to go all crazy to make it? How did we convince them that they have a problem? And then they became stressed for not being stressed. So think about that, and don't be afraid to be the one person who's different, just because everybody else makes it seem like the only way to be is to do, right? That's what, like, the idea of a human being, not a human doing, right? We're all human beings. So just learn how to be, as opposed to focusing on just doing.
Dido, can I ask you a question on that?
Shoot.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yeah.
So we have so many students here. It blows my mind how busy we have athletes and performers, and there is so much understanding and knowing from a tennis background. Mindfulness to me when I was younger was visualizing matches, because when you're striving to become the best at something, there's always more you can be doing. And I don't know if people here kind of know how that feeling, where it's like, even when you're training your most, you're like, there's always going to be more. And I think what you're saying, when you take those brain breaks though, and this comes from, Novak Djokovic does that, and the top players, to stop and reflect. People say when you hit a stroke or you do something really well, take like a mental picture of that. Like, a coach will say, remember that feeling, like remember what you just did, kind of copy that. And I think that there's a difference in ICL. We see it even with academics. Like, we try to eliminate all the ideas of busy work, because sometimes there are things, to stay busy means you're being productive. And I think what I'm hearing you say is that it's not about being busy, it's about being efficient. And it's about that those breaks are actually times for your body to process, reassess, and embody that. And I think that, there's no way, our students are so busy. I mean, it's amazing the schedules that they have. So I don't think anyone needs to compete on busyness, but at the same time, it's more, how can we help to put those sort of, brain breaks in, and how do we do that in a way, even during a school day for us, that can help because I think everyone would benefit from that.
Yeah, so let's transition into that by saying two things that you mentioned. The first one is something as simple as reflection and visualization. So that's like essentially saying I have an hour to do something and you have an hour to do something. And if you for the entire hour look busy, most people will assume you're more productive. And for me, for the first 15 minutes, if somebody sees me closing my eyes quietly, in the last 15, closing my eyes quietly, they might assume I'm wasting time. But what we know about visualization is this. When they put like the scan through brain scans, right, in EEG on your brain, somebody who's playing the piano and somebody who's thinking about playing the piano, the same parts of their brain light up. Literally, like literally the same parts of their brain. So that means that the more you spend time visualizing yourself hitting the tennis ball, making the three-pointer, swimming, diving, playing the piano, the more you spend time visualizing those things, the more your brain actually believes that you're doing it. There's documentation of divers who spend hours living, imagining ahead of time the entire dive and thinking about potential obstacles and how they're going to get over those things. And the more you do that, in addition to actual training, the more your brain feels like it's got extra training. So it's important to realize that from a brain science perspective. And what are some ways in which you can do that? Then let's get into the brain a little deeper, and talk about exactly why you want to understand the brain. Share. Okay. Can you guys all see the slides? So the brain is really complex. It's extremely complicated. You have billions of neurons, but for our purposes today, I want to simplify it into three parts of the brain that work well together, but that are different. So look at those three parts of the brain. The first part is the amygdala, then you have the prefrontal cortex, then the hippocampus. I'm going to spend most time talking about the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So your amygdala is the oldest part of your brain. It's the part in charge of your feelings and your emotions. That means that this is a part of your brain that doesn't really think. It just reacts, right? It just feels and reacts. Feelings, emotions, reactions. Now, you have heard the three F's before, right? The fight, flight, freeze. The fight, flight, freeze response of your brain comes from your amygdala. The reason why it comes from there is that it's a part of your brain that also wants you to be alive. It wants to keep you alive. It wants you to survive. So when there's a potential danger that comes, your amygdala wants to fight it so you can survive. Or flight, which is running away, or freeze and hoping that the danger goes away as you freeze. And this is extremely important for survival. Think about it. If you think about your ancestors, like millions of years ago, in the savannas of Africa somewhere walking in, and there's a tiger coming, they want to just either fight the tiger if they can, flight, run away, or freeze and hide until the danger is gone. Because the people who were all curious and inquisitive and who were always going towards the noise and wondering, what is that? What's going on there? What happened to them is they didn't make it. Because if you hear noise behind you and it might be a lion, you're better off running away instead of going there. Now, the key difference here though is that your amygdala doesn't understand the difference between a perceived danger and a real danger. So to your amygdala, all perceived dangers are as real as a real danger. What does that mean? That means that when you have a presentation to give in class and you spend all night practicing and preparing, and yet on presentation day, you get up in front of your classmates and you want to speak, nothing comes out. No words. You just can't move all of a sudden. That is your amygdala having a typical, standard freeze response. And I'm sure you've seen this before. You may see a speaker who's supposed to come talk to you guys, or you watch it on TV or YouTube, and they forget everything. That's a freeze. Think about yourself or somebody else then who was a presenter or speaker who, when they, instead of speaking to the audience, they start antagonizing the audience or being mean to people. Or think about a classmate of yours who may be in class when the teacher told them, okay, it's your turn to read. As soon as they heard that, they start going back and forth with the teacher. Why me? Why not her? Why not her? Why are you always picking on me? That's a classic fight response because, again, your amygdala is perceiving that the mere fact that your teacher is asking you to read out loud is a threat, a real threat. And of course, you have the standard, the second somebody asks you to do something, they ask you a question, your brain goes, I want to go to the bathroom. You're like, really? Why do you want to go to the bathroom now? It's your brain wanting to run away from what's perceived as danger. And I use the examples about public speaking because public speaking is one of the hardest things in the world to do. In fact, when they ask adults around the country to list the top 5 things that they were the most afraid of, public speaking was number 1. And it is number 1 because not only is your brain perceiving the people looking at you as a real danger, as real as if a lion wants to eat you, but the second thing is that your amygdala has what we call a negativity bias. That means that your amygdala is designed to only focus on the negative first. And think about it this way. If you walk into a room where there are a whole bunch of nice people smiling and one snake, your brain is designed to find the snake first. And this is good for survival because, again, if you walk into this room, you want to see the snake so you can either fight the snake or run away from it. That's how you survive. But although times have changed and there aren't a whole bunch of animals wanting to eat us around us, the brain hasn't changed that much. So when you have a friend or a parent who's been the most amazing parent ever, or a teacher who's been the great teacher, and then one day they do one thing that upsets you, your brain wants to focus on that bad thing. It forgets almost everything that has been positive for the past like year, and for like an hour or 2 or 3, it focuses only on the negative. And that's why if I put some simple like additions and subtractions on the board in front of you, like 1 + 1 = 2, 2 + 2 = 4, and the first 4 are correct, and then the last one is wrong, the first thing your brain will notice is the one that's wrong. And that's why the news are aware of this. And the news know that if all they do is share a whole bunch of positive thing on the news, your brain isn't as focused on it. But if your brain sees breaking news, something is burning, or this is not, like, your brain wants that. So that's why it's important for us to realize that we need to intentionally work on 2 things. 1, trying to work on against that negativity bias, but 2, try to work on realizing what's the difference between a perceived danger and a real danger. If you've seen a classmate of yours or a friend of yours having an anxiety attack over something as simple as reading out loud or playing a game, or you train, you practice, but on game day, the things you knew how to do, all of a sudden they don't work anymore. Realize that it's not something as simple as, oh, just snap out of it. No, it is the brain having a reaction that prevents it from accessing the knowledge and the practice. So that's your amygdala. The prefrontal cortex is in charge of your higher order thinking, your complicated skills, your learning new skills, your moral compass, the right, the wrong, the good, the bad, all those things you need to perform well during the game. All those things you need to do well in class, in school. All those things are in the prefrontal cortex. But what we know is that when your amygdala takes over your brain, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. That's why we have this image of the brain, which is, this is the amygdala, this is the prefrontal cortex. And when your amygdala takes over, you flip your lid, which means that the thinking part of your brain is gone and you can't think anymore. That's why during a game, the other team becomes the enemy. Like, you don't think anymore, or just because you missed a shot, or your coach was disappointed, your brain really goes into fight, flight, freeze mode, and there's no more thinking about, come on, this is a game, come on, you can do better next time. You are focused on having a fight, flight, freeze response. So when you understand this, 1, you can understand why some of the behaviors may or may not make sense to other people, but 2, you can learn how to focus on calming that amygdala through mindfulness. And if you've ever caught yourself driving and then somebody cut you off in traffic, and you respond aggressively for like 1 minute. And then later on, you ask yourself, what was I thinking? Why didn't I assume that this person had an emergency? The thing is, you weren't really thinking. You weren't really thinking because your thinking brain was essentially offline. So all the things that you guys already mentioned, journaling, practicing gratitude, all those are mindfulness practices that are designed to calm your amygdala. Your hippocampus is in charge of your long-term memories, and this is where you store those experiences. But if you look at the image, it's directly connected to your amygdala. That means that your memories and your feelings are connected. So when you're journaling about the last game that was very, very good, the last presentation, the last interaction, conversation, the more you think about the way you felt, the more your brain is going to remember how to access it again. That's why journaling is so powerful. But the simplest exercise that I want to try with you guys right now is just mindful breathing. So we're going to do it for like 90 seconds, and then we're going to stop and debrief before we close out. So what I want you to do is, if you are sitting, put your feet flat on the ground. And if you can, have your back straight. So we are going to focus on just breathing. Now, when I say breathing, think about breathing in this way. Your brain has essentially two operating systems. There's the one that's automatic, there's the one that's intentional. The automatic one has things like breathing, swallowing, things you don't digesting, things you don't think about before you do. And then the intentional one is where you shift so you can actually focus on doing something. So I want you during the brain break, during mindful breathing, to shift from the automatic breathing to the intentional breathing. And during this intentional breathing, make sure you fill your belly when you inhale, and then exhale out through your nose or through your mouth. It's up to you. So, okay, again, feet flat on the ground, back straight if you can. I'm going to put a timer, and we won't spend more than 90 seconds doing this. And if you feel comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes right now. If you don't want to close your eyes, that's okay. Just look at your hands on your lap or whatever. And then take your first deep inhale through your nose. Exhale. Do it again and focus on the sound of this chime. Make sure you feel your belly when you inhale. And try to exhale for about twice as long as you inhale. So if you inhale for a count of 1, 2, try to exhale for a count of 1, 2, 3, 4. See how that goes. Continue intentionally breathing at your own pace. And if you notice that your mind is wandering and there are distractions, that's perfectly fine. Just give 1 second of attention to those distractions, and then just bring your focus back to inhaling and exhaling. On this next exhale, I want you to check in with your shoulders and your back. If there's any tension on your shoulders or your back, as you exhale, try to release that tension. In the next exhale, do the same thing with your neck and your jaw. If there's any tension there, as you exhale, try to release that tension. And do the same thing with your eyebrows. Make sure you're not frowning. Exhale, release any tension. Then make sure again you inhale, fill your belly, and exhale. You're going to hear the chime one more time. Listen for the sound for as long as you can. And when you can't hear the sound anymore, I want you to take 2, 3 more deep breaths, and then you're going to look up or open your eyes. Here we go. Thank you for being mindful. That was 2 minutes of mindful breathing. So I'm going to stop screen sharing here so we can debrief together as we close. And my first question to you is, how did that feel for you, those 2 minutes?
I needed it.
For me, it reminded me of something an old teacher of mine did. So it kind of brought back memories.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? How was that? How would do those 2 minutes?
I personally enjoyed it. It kind of reminded me of some, because I used to do yoga, like not a lot, but a little bit. And they focus, like in yoga, you focus a lot on like your breathing and like relaxing and stuff. So, and I want to get into meditation. I haven't practiced it, but I also feel like that is the same concept with just like being aware of what you're doing and relaxing your body and all of that. So I enjoyed it.
I was very relaxed, and well, I wasn't thinking about nothing. I was just like relaxed.
And now you know the science behind what you just did. What you did is you took your amygdala from being everywhere to calming down so you can be here and now. And remember what I said about if you are distracted and your mind is wandering, that's okay. I say just acknowledge that distraction for a second and then come back. It's like if you're playing sports, it's okay if you're distracted. In fact, you are going to be distracted. But the thing is, you want to acknowledge that for a second and train yourself to come back to what you're doing. Acknowledge, train, come back. Acknowledge, train, come back. Because the more you do it, the more your brain actually changes. And that's why athletes and actors and certain people can just get in the zone. Right? You just bap and you're in a different world. It's like when I speak sometimes, I start speaking and I can spend 3 hours with people doing trainings. And when I'm done, I'm like, whoa, who was that? What was that? Because I was no longer thinking, wondering, asking myself questions. I was in what I was doing. The same thing happens when you're writing, when you're playing sports, when you're watching a good movie, listen to a good song, and all that stuff is mindfulness. And the more you do it, the more you actually rewire your brain. You literally change your brain from a brain that needs help getting in a zone to a brain that has a few triggers to always be in the zone. And the question I have for you now is the following then. When do you think something like this that we just did, when do you think during a regular day or a regular week, when could that be useful to you? Uh-huh.
So, I was gonna say when I'm in a match, like during the weekend, I have a national tournament coming up. I'm gonna use it a lot because like on changeover, say I'm down like badly. Like if I just keep thinking, oh my God, I'm losing. Oh my God, like I'm not gonna get any better. Like I'm not just gonna suddenly just win. So if I calm down and like take my time, it'll help a lot.
Yes, that right there is just right on the money. That's it right there. That's why when I taught this to my students, my IB students, they never wanted to do a presentation again without doing this because they realized that right before when you get up to go do the presentation, all those ideas, all those negative thoughts, all that, it's because your amygdala has a negativity bias. So if you do this before your presentation, you're calming that down. It's the same thing before a game, during a match. So I love that example, Sarah. Thank you. Anybody else? When do you think something like this might be useful to you during a regular day or a regular week? Go ahead.
I would say before practice, because like usually when I practice, I'm thinking about something and it's hours and hours of doing the same thing repeatedly. So it's like instead of being on my game and practicing with like my five senses, I'll be thinking about what I'll do when I get home. So if I do this before, I think I'll be like more awake and concentrated before training.
Awesome. Anybody else?
For me, I guess. Sorry, you can go ahead.
I feel also like before bed because I think I have a problem when I go to sleep. I take a long time to go to sleep because I have too many thoughts in my head. which is really like complicated. And then I realized I've been 1 hour with my eyes closed, but I haven't gone to sleep. So probably like before to sleep, just meditate or like breathe and get those thoughts away, because I feel like clouding the mind can really like, it's really complicated to go to sleep. And if I just like clear my mind, I feel like that would help a lot.
And I want to add a quick tip, Charlotte. When you try that, also try to do alternate breathing with through your nose. Like hold one like this, inhale this way, and exhale this way. I promise you, you're gonna drop. Like just do that just practice that before bed, because I can't sleep, super insomniac here. Give it a shot. You're gonna see. Go ahead, Sophie.
For me, I guess I'm just the type of person who blanks out a lot. Like if I'm taking a test or something, and even if I've studied, I always blank out. Like no matter what, I have that problem. So I would do that before taking a test or something.
Yeah, you guys got it, because being distracted isn't what the problem is. It's like almost think about distractions as a train that comes through your mind. And the question is, are you going to notice the train? Yes. But do you need to get on the train and take the ride? No, because that's not what you're doing right now. You are playing a game right now. You're taking a test right now. You want to sleep right now. So the train comes. The goal is to not even notice the train, like those athletes. Yes. But if you notice the train, it's okay. Just don't hop on it and go. So we're going to close out here. And I hope that you guys are able to practice these things. I really want you to take what we learned today, spend your week, try to practice something here and there, meet with other people and ask questions. And the next time when we meet, I'm going to ask about what you guys practiced and how it was. So I'm here if anybody has more questions, but it's past 45. So for those who have to go, it's been real, but I'm here.
Thank you.
That was awesome.
That was so great. And everyone that's here, thanks so much. Students, I will be sending you your badges, but just thanks for just bringing so much conversation to this. It really made this come to life. I really enjoyed it. So we'll see you guys next week. And like Dido said, if you want to stick around and have a question for him, you can, but we'll see the rest of you guys same time next week.
Hi, Dido, that was so wonderful.